Okay, we're going to get started here. Showtime. I know there's some folks still out in the lobby enjoying the poster presentations, and I don't blame them. That is pretty exciting what's happening out there. And the posters will be up following the keynote address, so folks are invited to go out there and have more conversations with the poster presenters. Good evening. My name is Katie Christensen. I've spent most of the day with many of you here, and I'm so excited to see that. So many of you have stuck around for the keynote event and to see some new faces as well. I'm the executive director of the Northern Rockies Conservation Cooperative, who has hosted the event today, the 10th Biennial Northern Rockies Conservation Symposium. And I want to begin by thanking our event sponsors, the Meg and Bert Raynes Wildlife Fund, Ricketts Conservation Foundation, Francis Clark and Bernie McHugh, the Community Foundation of Jackson Hole, JH Eco-Tour Adventures, Wyoming Wildlife Advocates, Jackson Hole Conservation Alliance, Guides of Jackson Hole, KHOL, Teton Science Schools, and Wyoming Untrapped. I also want to thank our event volunteers, including the Teton Science School AmeriCorps service members. I want to thank my colleagues, and a big thank you to all of today's presenters. For those of you just joining us, these are the handouts that we had for the day, and we have some extras out in the lobby. You're welcome and encouraged to grab one. And on the inside front cover is a QR code. You can read about who our presenters were. We had 50 folks here giving presentations today. And this QR code takes you to their bios and their abstracts. We also are live streaming, and so hello to those who are here with us on the live stream. And there will be a recording of today's events that we will be posting after this. Since our founding in 1987, NRCC has worked to advance coexistence within our home region of the Northern Rockies and to carry forth this legacy of conservation to our work globally. We were established as a home for independent researchers and integrative thinking, and we continue to work at the intersection of science and practice, policy and culture, wildlife coexistence, and human dignity. At the heart of our work is our simple but profound mission: conservation for the common good. This mission recognizes that intact natural systems serve the best interest of humanity, and thus our work involves not only wildlife and ecosystems, but efforts to strengthen the democratic and civil foundations that allow human and natural communities to function and thrive together. For nearly 4 decades, NRCC has served as a convener and innovator of this work, shaping conservation practice at regional, national, and global scales. Our contributions include helping to pioneer the concept of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, advancing landmark efforts including wolf reintroduction and large carnivore coexistence, contributing to endangered species research and management, and bringing critical attention to long-distance wildlife migrations. But behind our most visible engagements, from our body of research and publications to our network of 50 research associates and our many workshops, courses, and events, lies our core impact: the cultivation of a culture grounded in critical thinking and in problem solving. We work to cultivate a way of thinking and doing that values collaboration, learning, and long-term thinking. We do this by investing in relationships. We create space for dialogue. We bring people together to make sense of the complex challenges and to figure out what to do next, just as we are doing here tonight. All this work takes time, and yet we remain committed to our steady practice of bringing people together to think, learn, and act in the common good, as this work is what's required to meet the challenges of our moment. The underlying challenges and opportunity of our times are to build the outlook and the intellectual and moral infrastructure for a sustainable future, which is to say, the nature of the task before us is not just ecological. It is civic, it is cultural, it is human. This past year has seen a significant increase in the complexity and severity of threats to biodiversity, ecosystem health, and civil working relationships. Both our natural systems and our systems of democracy are under strain. This interconnection should not come as a surprise to any of us. Healthy ecosystems require cooperation, trust, sacrifice, and long-term thinking. So do healthy democracies. Both depend on our ability to see beyond ourselves, to consider the common good, and to act with responsibility and sacrifice towards people we will never meet and futures we will never see. Many of us in the room today heard from our 50 speakers from across disciplines and institutions exploring the challenges and opportunities facing this region. We heard about science, policy, and practice. We connected ideas, and we connected with one another. Out of all of this is a great feeling in the room of momentum, a feeling of possibility, a feeling of shared purpose. And we're bringing that into the conversation tonight. And tonight, we're going to be turning directly to a central question of our time, the question of how do we strengthen the democratic foundations that make conservation and a just and livable future possible. As this evening is about the systems and values that sustain a shared future, then our awards ceremony, where we are beginning our evening tonight, is about the people whose work reflects these very ideas. Ideas of commitment to the common good, to community, and to the long view. It is my pleasure to transition us to this evening's awards ceremony and to invite our first award presenters to stage. We're honored to have Bernie McHugh and Francis Clark, both previous award recipients of the Raynes Citizen Conservation Award, and Bernie McHugh of NRCC's Board of Advisors, here to present the Raynes Citizen Conservation Award.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you very much. We were so privileged several years ago to receive the Megan Burt Raynes Citizen Conservation Award. It was only a few years after we'd gotten here, but we got sort of engaged pretty quickly because we met Burt fairly early on, and Bernie will tell you a little bit about how that happened. And so then we got engaged in the Jacksonville Wildlife Foundation, NRCC. We loved the Raptor Center. We loved all these extraordinary institutions that many of you are representing here tonight, and also the good work that's going on. Bernie is here to say a little bit about why he's looking the way he is and how he met Burt.
Hi, it's great to see a lot of friends out there and a lot of new faces. The duck's name is Burt, okay? And I believe that I probably am in the last picture of Burt that was ever taken before he passed away, and I was standing behind him wearing the duck hat and a mask. But when we got, a few years after we got here, we were sitting down with Burt, and he said two things. He said, "Go find Susan Clark and talk to her," which we did, and that introduced us to Peyton and NRCC, which is an organization that we love. And we have a relationship with the Jacksonville Wildlife Foundation. Francis ran the Moose Day program and did the nature mapping training for several years. And I am still a reviewer for birds for nature mapping. And Burt, we never had the opportunity to meet Meg, unfortunately, but Burt always said that she was his muse. And he was a man of extraordinary warmth, intellect, and an occasionally really sharp sense of humor. And he loved the idea of citizen science or community science and people getting involved on a volunteer basis. And I think that's what I have to say about him.
That's right. And he ran the bird club, and Burt loved birds, I think, most of all. So hence the bird, the hat. I will say that Bert would have been really tickled, in his own words, to see so many people here tonight. He really loved hearing the latest science about wildlife, particularly from young people. He welcomed all and sundry to his home in Skyline, which is down the road from here, who told him about the news of their latest sightings, and then he might add an extra tidbit of his own from his prodigious memory. He wrote a weekly column, and he would get a thought in his brain, and he said, okay, I need to check that out. And he would say to Mary Loheis, who would be the scribe in his later years, that, go to the room there, pick out the book that's on the second shelf, and go turn to page 47, and we'll check this out. He loved the fact that the internet came along, and he could do that a lot more easily. But he had this extraordinary memory and love for wildlife. To Bert, there was no such thing as just a robin. Common species are as important and as fascinating as the rarities. There was no such thing as just a mallard. And he believed in keeping common species common. And that was one of the core intents of his initiating the nature mapping program with some of the other people in the room here, and which is now under the Jackson Hole Wildlife Foundation. Bert really did, as Bernie said, wanted to engage citizen scientists, volunteers, all of us, to keep an eye out for our wildlife. Nature mapping is just one way we can be involved to do so, not only just looking at it, but doing something for the wildlife, which was to add those data points to the map. And so the Citizen Science Conservation Award recognizes a volunteer who has dedicated their talents, time, and dare I say, and most importantly, heart and soul to wildlife, large and small, here in Jackson Hole. And Bernie will do the next step.
Yep, give me that.
And I will take this off.
Yeah, okay.
That's what we decided to do.
Da-da-da! This year, we are honoring Randy Reedy, and I think Randy is an incredible choice for this volunteer Citizen Science Award. And he's been a cornerstone of the Jackson Hole Wildlife Foundation since moving to the Valley with his wife Robin in 2009. And they're also committed to other volunteer activities and service to the community. And Randy joined the board of the directors in 2010 of the Jackson Hole Wildlife Foundation, and then served as treasurer, helping guide the organization through a formative period of growth and stabilization. And he supported fence removal efforts across the valley, restoring wildlife movement corridors and reconnecting seasonal ranges. He's helped the Wildlife Foundation advance wildlife-friendly fencing, both removal and modification, through consistent hands-on work with landowners and partners. He also taught the Wildlife Foundation a simple field rule: all tools are to return to home base. And it's prevented more than a few tools from making their way home in someone else's truck or pack. He's contributed to long-term monitoring efforts, including annual moose day count. I have a note that in 2022, his team saw 11 moose on the golf and tennis club property. He's deeply rooted in the community through service in the Presbyterian Church of Jackson and teaches Sunday school. During COVID-19, he stepped up to assist with vaccination site operations, including traffic coordination. Randy is somebody for whom this award was truly made. So let me turn it over to Randy Reedy.
Well, I'm here, and I don't feel comfortable about it, but I'm here anyway. First of all, I want to thank the NRCC and for coordinating this symposium and all the presenters. This is the first time I've ever been to something like this, and boy, I didn't realize how stupid I was until I sat in here all day. There's an incredible amount of information that I needed to know that I didn't, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that, and I'll be back for the next one. And I think there's a lot of professionals that were here today. It would be great if some normal foot soldier volunteers like me would be able to attend some of this more, and so I'll encourage people to do that. I especially want to thank the Megan Burt Wildlife Fund for recognizing me. Like I said, I wasn't real comfortable with this, but then I heard Megan Burt Raynes, and it's sort of like, well, that's really awesome. I had the opportunity to sit in Bert's living room for a little while there during some transitional moments in the Wildlife Foundation, and I just can't say enough good things about just listening to him and his knowledge, but just his attitude and wisdom. So thank you again. I really appreciate this recognition. I'd like to really thank the Jackson Hole Wildlife Foundation. They've been at this for a while. I think they're going on 3 decades of what I'll call hundreds of projects, obviously, but creating a community. Today, I think I heard the term caring communities, communities that care for migration and habitat. Well, they've been doing this for a long time, and obviously made a big difference, 250 to whatever number of miles. But if you've been out on a fence line or something like that, and you've been taking down wire, and then all of a sudden you get the mind's eye of what it looks like for the wildlife. Where are you going? Where are you starting? Where are you going? What's in the way? And I would think thousands of people have learned this lesson of looking at things the way our ungulates and other critters look at it. And so I really thank the foundation for continuing to stay focused on that. The other thing I need to say is I've worked with some really incredible people out on different projects, and I think there's some people I've worked with that could be up here just as well as me. They're not, but I will try and represent them as best I can. And so on behalf of them and me, thank you very much.
I need to do your clap.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sorry. Here you are, sir.
Good, sure, thanks.
Thank you. Congratulations. Wonderful. Our next award is the Craighead Conservation Award. And presenting our award is NRCC's Board President, Peyton Griffin.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Katie. It's so wonderful to see everyone here and new faces that weren't here during the day. The Craighead Conservation Award was established by Jason. You might want to stand up and say hi. He was our executive director at the time, and we did it with the Teton Science School, Doug Wacom. It is to honor the legacy of Frank and John Craighead for their extraordinary dedication to wildlife conservation in Jackson Hole and the Greater Yellowstone. And recipients of this award have significantly impacted wildlife conservation in the GYE region and demonstrated the dedicated spirit of the Craighead brothers through years of service in wildlife research, management, community involvement, and policy. Past recipients are pretty impressive: Steve Kilpatrick, Michael Whitfield, Bruce Smith, Franz Camenzind, Deborah Patla, Susan Patla, Mark Elbrock, PJ White, Doug Smith, and Jim Halfpenny. So I think it's like the perfect award for this theme today. Frank and John Craighead's research really showed us, especially their radio telemetry work, what this ecosystem is because of their tracking bears, and that this functioning ecosystem is much larger than just Yellowstone and Grand Teton. It's also the area forests, wildlife refuges, and the many connected private lands. In addition to having the privilege of still possessing our full suite of large carnivores, another hallmark of Greater Yellowstone is that we still have long-distance ungulate migrations. Elk, mule deer, and pronghorn have shown us new ways of thinking about Greater Yellowstone, the extent of it, and then the connectivity and even the landscape scale, which we started talking about this afternoon, and also some of the fragility of some of these connections. And this year we are honoring 3 outstanding scientists and wildlife managers who have been working for decades to understand the needs of wildlife in the Greater Yellowstone. And I'm going to have Katie give us the names. Yay! So this year's awardees are Eric Cole, Allison Allie Cordemanch, and Sarah Dewey. Woo! So I'm going to say a few things about them, and then they'll get to come up and say something too. No, you can stay right there. That's good. So this award speaks to the many ways that Eric, Allie, and Sarah exemplify outstanding science, dedication to public outreach and education, and commitment to conservation partnerships and networks, which is the major theme of this symposium. Eric is senior wildlife biologist at the National Elk Refuge, where he has served for 28 years. He previously worked at Oregon State University as a forest wildlife ecologist. Allie has held positions in the GYE for the last 21 years and is currently the Jackson wildlife biologist for the Wyoming Game and Fish Department, where she has served for 15 years. Sarah worked with 3 national forests in the Intermountain West for 12 years, most recently at the Bridger Teton, and has served as wildlife biologist at Grand Teton National Park for almost 23 years. And I say serve when I talk about your work because it really is above and beyond just a job, and that's what they exemplify. They're all 3 committed to learning and sharing as much as they can about the ecology of our region and how humans can live more harmoniously with wildlife. Most of us in this room have benefited from their combined 170-plus research articles, their formal and informal presentations, and their extensive work with local media organizations, which makes such a difference, and it's something that we recognize that you put time into. We're most familiar with Eric, Allie, and Sarah's work with elk, deer, pronghorn, moose, bison, bighorn sheep, and mountain goats, but they also have done research and monitoring on eagles, sage grouse, owls, wildlife diseases, invasive species, and habitat quality and associations. Peers and colleagues nominated these 3 with words that included remarkable and exceptional. They are especially noteworthy for their collaborative networks for research and co-management of the Jackson elk herd, and what one person noted as a commitment to shared success, and another said will have lasting impacts for conservation. So these 3 obviously emerged as frontrunners for the award through their efforts to work across geographic and governance boundaries at an ecosystem scale that lives up to the vision of the Craigheads. The selection committee took the unusual step of awarding 3 people this year because not only are they individually so deserving, but collectively they are even more effective and impressive. The Craigheads wish that they could be here today. They usually, Charlie or Lance, Karen, and Derek try to be here and they couldn't, and they extend their warm wishes and congratulations. So I'm going to have Eric, you want to come up first and have something to say? Yeah.
Thank you, Peyton. This is a great honor. It's an honor to be associated with the Craighead brothers, who I admired since I was a kid and decided to be a wildlife biologist way back as a kid. It's an honor to be associated with the previous recipients of this award, many of whom were my friends and colleagues and still are. And above all, it's a great honor to be associated with Allie and Sarah and to accept this award together, because without their friendship and good humor and collaboration, much of my work wouldn't have been possible. So again, thank you very much. This means a great deal to me.
And this is Allie Cordemanch.
Thank you, Peyton. Thank you, everyone. Like Eric said, this is a tremendous honor, definitely a highlight of my career, especially for me when I got here 21 years ago. My very first job was in Grand Teton National Park in the summer, and one of the first people that I met working there was Sarah. And that next winter, my next job working here in Jackson was on the Elk Refuge, where I met Eric. And so we've been colleagues and friends for a very long time. And I think what we've been able to do together is because of that. And I really treasure that relationship with you guys. I also really am glad that it's given to the three of us, because one of the things that I strongly believe in conservation is that we don't do anything by ourselves. We always do things as part of a team. And anything that's significant happens is a lot of collaboration and a lot of people involved. So I think that's really special, and thank you very much. And lastly, it's just a privilege to get to work in this community and get to work in this ecosystem. It's a dream come true, and all of you in the room that I've gotten to work with and be friends with, it's just amazing. So thank you very much for this recognition.
And Sarah Dewey.
Thank you. I'm really deeply, deeply honored to receive the Craighead Conservation Award, and especially to share it with my colleagues, Allie and Eric. They may be more articulate than me. It really means a lot more because we're sharing it. This recognition means a great deal personally, but really because it reflects collective work of many people who have dedicated themselves to conserving wildlife in the greater Yellowstone. It means that much more. It's been one of the real privileges of my career to work alongside talented, committed partners across agencies and organizations and communities who bring their full effort and integrity to this work every day. The collaborative network that this award recognizes is real. Its strength is in those relationships that enable important work to happen, often quietly but steadily. So the legacy of Frank and John Craighead looms really large in this place, and their work helps shape how we understand wildlife, ecology, and the responsibility that we carry as stewards. To be recognized in that context is really humbling, and a reminder of the standard that they set for rigorous science, independence of thought, and a deep, enduring commitment to the natural world. So thank you to all of you that were part of the selection, and everyone who's been a part of the shared efforts that Allie, Eric, and I have accomplished. I'm grateful to be in such good company, and I look forward to continuing the work together.
And we have a token of your amazing work and recognition. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Our third and final award tonight is a new award, the inaugural Yellowstonian Conservation Leadership Award. And this award is in recognition of founding leadership that helped define our region's conservation movement. And I'm going to introduce Todd Wilkinson of the Yellowstonian up to the stage to tell us a bit more.
So as we all know, conservation is not a sprint, but it can be a slog, and longevity matters a lot. What we're doing tonight is we're presenting our first ever Yellowstonian Conservation Leadership Award, and it's going to two organizations that have been foundational in Jackson Hole. If you consider Greater Yellowstone the cradle of American wildlife conservation, which it is, Jackson Hole has been the epicenter of that. And tonight, we have two giants to whom I am profoundly grateful. They were really gentle on me when I was a young 20-something as a journalist arriving in this valley, and really taught me the ropes of conservation and how to think beyond our own lifetime. This award tonight, it's a bronze sculpture by Mike Barlow of Billings, Montana, and for this first one, again, it's going to go to two groups. Before I introduce the two presenters, I just want you to think back 50 years to this valley. Imagine this. Imagine sour natural gas development, the potential of this deadly gas that could pour out of natural gas development up Cache Creek. Or imagine the Snake River being dammed and the Oxbow being flooded under by water. Or imagine the pressure that we have today. Those two feats of a group that stood up was then the Jackson Hole Alliance for Responsible Planning, today the Jackson Hole Conservation Alliance. Imagine, too, what this valley would look like if 66,000 acres in and around Jackson Hole were not protected by the Jackson Hole Land Trust. That, for those of you who keep track, that's 2.5 times the size of the National Elk Refuge. So tonight we are honoring both the Jackson Hole Land Trust and the Jackson Hole Conservation Alliance. And the presenters tonight, again, are two legends. Franz Camenzind, an award-winning filmmaker, a PhD biologist. He spent 23 years associated with the Conservation Alliance, half of that time as executive director. And he'll be presenting to Jenny Fitzgerald, the ED of the Jackson Hole Conservation Alliance. And then we have Phil Hocker, a dear friend, a giant in his own right, was here in Jackson Hole fighting off a lot of bad natural resource development in the 70s and 80s, was with the Sierra Club, went on to found the Mineral Policy Center, which worked for decades to reform the 1872 mining law, if you remember that. The law without a brain, I think Phil Hocker coined that term. But it's especially poignant because Phil Hocker's late wife, Jean, founded the Jackson Hole Land Trust along with a group of other dedicated individuals, and then went on to found the Land Trust Alliance, this national organization. So if you think about the nascency of land trusts, once again, it didn't start here, but the movement took shape here in a landscape where protected private lands really matter. You heard me talk about that earlier today. And so to have Franz here and to have Phil Hocker fly out from Greater DC to be here to present the award to Max Ludington, who oversees the Jackson Hole Land Trust, this is really about legacy. And before I bring Franz up here, I want you to look at some things. These were the early people in Jackson Hole, some of whom have passed on, who were affiliated with the Jackson Hole Conservation Alliance. And here's the Jackson Hole Land Trust. Max compiled all of the board members that have been affiliated and staffers affiliated with the Land Trust over the years. And so you think about this, it really is a movement. Every one of these people touched somebody else. It's why the level of acumen, ecological acumen, is so high here, and we take that for granted. So without further ado, Franz, could you please come up? Let's hear it for Franz Camenzind.
Well, there he goes again. A journalist, fake news. Too much to say about not enough person up here. Welcome, everyone. First of all, I just want to say I had nothing to do with the scheduling, so don't blame me for interrupting your happy hour, okay? You can have it later. It'll be good. It'll still be good. I want to spend just a few minutes going over some of the history of the Jackson Hole Conservation Alliance. And a lot of the names have already been mentioned, and Todd put a lot of names up on the screen. But I think it's very important to recognize the people who actually started this, which was back in 1978 when it was officially marked down as an organization, but really 79 when it got going. And the reason it got started was because Teton County was going through its first comprehensive plan. And like so many places, the word plan was not a popular word. There were 3 county commissioners, and they were not happy with it, but the residents wanted it, and it was time to start doing it. So Leslie Peterson, I don't think she's here tonight, but she was, at the time, president of the Wyoming Outdoor Council Board, and also spent a lot of time here in Jackson. And she decided to pull a bunch of people together who are interested in, the future of Jackson Hole. So they got together sort of as a steering committee, first of all, to watch over this comp plan and, to push for the better plan. And that first steering committee was made up of a number of people, most of whom are no longer with us: Bev Coulard, Mike Wardell, Mike Brennan, Gene Hocker, who's been mentioned, Gene Hoffman, Chuck Reeser, and Ken Thomasma. These are the people that started the Jackson Hole Conservation Alliance, which at that point was called the Jackson Hole Alliance for Responsible Planning, because that's what they were focused on. Their first ED was Story Clark, and she's still here in the Valley and still very important, and she was actually part of the Land Trust organization too for a long time. So she has a large role to play in this and should be recognized for that. Jackson Hole, I first came here in 1970, or moved here in 1970, and it was a different place then. There's no question about it. I think there was something like 10 or 12,000 people in the county. Now we have more than that in just the town of Jackson. So growth has just been one of the big issues here and how to manage it. We saw a lot of discussion this afternoon about managing growth, which I think is sort of an oxymoron. But we keep trying. It's the right thing. But before all of this, there was no Jackson Hole Conservation Alliance. Those First Nations people that were here weren't messing things up. But we came along and, we did the best we could to start that problem. And I think growth is one of them, and it's inevitable. The situation when I got here in 70, there were no grizzly bears in the valley. If there was one sighted, it was up in Buffalo Valley, coming out of the Teton Wilderness, and it made the newspapers. Now they go through town. There were no wolves, obviously. We have more antelope now, or maybe not this last couple of years. We had no peregrine falcon back then. They've been hacked into the situation, into the valley here. Trumpeter swans are probably at their maximum number, same with bald eagles. Elk population is holding its own with the management, a lot of being directed by Allie, who was just up here a few minutes ago, and the rest of the park and elk people. And there were only 9 bison in the valley then. And we had over 1,000 here at one point, a few decades ago now, and the management plan is aimed at keeping around 500. My point here is that we've done a lot of good things after some bad situations. It cost a lot, and if we could have kept these animals from getting to these low points and requiring this type of on-hands management, that costs a lot. We could have avoided it, but we can do good things, and we have been doing good things. But the pressures on this place continue, and that's where the NGOs come in, because the agencies can only do so much. They can provide the data and, you know, the management machine and all of this, but they can't really go out and advocate. That's really not their position. So the Jackson Hole Conservation Alliance came together with the idea of advocating for the betterment of the valley. And a few years after they came into play in I think it was 81, early 80s, what was mentioned by Todd, there was an oil and gas proposal, exploratory well up in Cache Creek and also in Little Granite Creek. And that was fought at tooth and nail by the community. Everybody came together because having, first of all, an industrial road going up Cache Creek would have been in itself a disaster into the stream and whatnot. But the potential for natural gas, you know, a leakage of sour gas and those sort of things was just too much. And it was the first time, with that kind of pressure, it was the first time, or second time in Forest Service history, that they did a full EIS just on an exploration drilling permit, on the exploration drilling permit. And it was the first time that they, in the EIS, actually put together a no drilling option. So a lot of things happened here because the community came together, because the Alliance was at the forefront of that. There's a book out by Dr. Ryder. I hope you've seen it. If you haven't, you must pick it up and read it. It's called The Crucible for Conservation. And he goes through the conservation history of this area. And he talks about the Alliance, but he also goes back and talks about the history of conservation here with the Yellowstone National Park being founded, and Teton Forest Preserve, which then became part of the Teton Forest Service, not Forest Preserve, which it started as. The Craigheads were mentioned. They were instrumental in promoting the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act that passed, and we now have rivers designated here in the valley. The Murray family was here, and they were strong advocates for the Wilderness Act in 1964. All of these acts were instrumental. This was in the 60s and 70s when conservation was really being looked at as a positive element. We were the crucible of conservation. Our challenge now is, can we retain that? Can the Alliance, can the Land Trust, can all these other organizations, the NGOs that are in this room here, can we maintain that credibility, that honor of being a crucible for conservation? The pressures continue. I don't know how we can address it without all of us coming together, being activated. That's the challenge for the Alliance now. I want to quote Ruth Bader Ginsburg in association with Marty Murray. Marty, if you knew her, and I did have the pleasure of meeting her, and actually one day for our 20th anniversary of the Alliance, we had David Brower come in and give a speech here up at Snow King. And I picked David up at the airport and immediately took him up to Marty's cabin up at the Murray Ranch. And just to see and hear those two legendary conservationists together it was one of the highlights and one of the privileges of my life. But Marty was so effective. She was so quiet and so calm and so precise and so articulate. And this RGB quote comes to mind: fight for what you truly believe in, but do it in a way that you can bring other people along with you. And that is going to have the part of the work that the Alliance is going to be challenged with, is bringing the people along, but being strong, being very deliberate, making your case. So with that, it's my honor to not literally give, but honor the Jackson Hole Conservation Alliance, Jenny Fitzgerald, and as she said herself in public, so I'll say it now, and her kiss-ass team of women. I'm going to blame it on you.
Oh, thank you so much, Franz. On behalf of the organization, my current board and staff, it really is an honor to be recognized. it is incredibly humbling to be leading an organization that's been in this community for 47 years. I think a show of hands, who has been on the staff, on the board, the advisory committee, CLI grad, who in the audience? Yeah, there's so many of you. So there's this list that was up here. Again, that was a list that we pulled together of the first about 10 years. It's not even necessarily comprehensive, but that's just 10 years of an organization that's been around for almost 5 decades at this point. And I think it just highlights a thread through everything that we've heard today, that it really does take, it takes an entire community, it takes relationships, and we would not be here if it weren't for hundreds of people before us. And it's really, it's been a journey to learn the history of the Alliance, and I've been grateful for Franz and so many others who have welcomed me gently into this organization that has such deep roots in the community. Today, the Alliance is a team of 6 women, and it's, I think, and I've heard this from some who know, arguably one of the most professional teams that we have had. And I've had the great privilege of building that team, and we work very diligently and have worked to make some transitions over the last couple of years to really try and be solution-oriented. And we're still the watchdog organization that the community has come to know. But at the same time, the landscape is shifting in terms of what we have to react to. The budgets of what we're reacting to is changing, and that changes how we're able to actually respond. And so with that, we are looking at becoming more long-term focused and taking on some of the bigger projects. And so for those of you that I haven't had the privilege to meet, I welcome you to please introduce yourself. My door is always open to learn and share. And to quote one of my staff, that very shortly after she started, she said, our job is so cool. We get to build relationships with people in this community who have been at the bedrock of conservation, and some of the names that have literally been in the textbooks that I got to read going through college. So it's an incredible honor, and I look forward to meeting any of you who I haven't been able to make the connections with yet so that I don't get shot in the foot by one of my staff. This summer, we have a couple of things along with CLI that we're launching. We're starting a conservation cafe to create a space in the community to have open dialogue. And that will be every 3rd Thursday through the summer. And it's open to everyone. It's a place to learn what's going on, what we're engaging in, and to have broader conversation about what's happening in our community and what can be done about it. The other thing that we do through the summer is we have potlucks. And it's a way of, it demonstrates that many hands make light work, and coming together around a meal and contributing in a different way to create that space and welcome in everyone from the OGs of this valley to the newcomers. So please join our mailing list to learn more about all those events, and I hope to see more of you. Thank you so much.
Congratulations. I want to welcome Phil Hocker up to the stage to introduce the award to the Jackson Hole Land Trust.
Those of you who know me, I have an alibi. For those of you who don't, I've been misrepresented. Todd described me as gentle. That was clearly an impersonator. But I'm really not here on my own behalf tonight. I'm here as a proxy for many people. And since they can't speak for themselves, I'll try not to take too long. I was reminded, Gene and I were visiting Bert Raynes at his home, which we did when we could, and Bert and I were exchanging quips, which we did, and I rattled off, as Mark Twain said, sincerity is everything. If you can fake that, you've got it made. And Bert said, you're wrong. That wasn't Mark Twain, it was George Burns, and he was right, too. So a little humility and a little perspective and a little careful research, and knowing that there really are facts, and some of them aren't digitized, which the Forest Service and I had a little discussion about a couple of years ago, and it, all's well that ends well. But the question, establishing sincerity was what the Land Trust had to do when Gene and Story Clark really, Gene and Story really were working joined at the hips. Thanks, Chief. IT. Is that all right? And she should be here tonight, maybe probably standing here instead of me, or joining Max in receiving the award, because it was a group effort, and Story and Gene in particular, frankly, were two steady hands who kept the Alliance and the Land Trust separately, and I won't say but equally, but both together, moving and pulling together as organizations that would establish staying power. And for the Land Trust, staying power is essential. You're asking landowners to surrender certain powers over their use of the land that they think is theirs to some organization, and when you're starting a new land trust from scratch, and the national rules and credibility of local land trusts was not that thoroughly established at that point, certainly not in Wyoming, and not in Jackson Hole. And so Gene got to know a lot of ranching families, and they were very welcoming. Some of them were the Dude ranching families that had changed the character of the valley that time. And some of them were the real cattle ranching families. And Gene had to get their trust if the land trust was going to be a success. You don't get to make very many mistakes as a land trust. It's not an easy job. And Gene went on, perhaps unwittingly validating Todd's point that conservation all starts here, and this is the only place. There's an awful lot of data from other parts of the country against that. But this part, Gene had the experience, she had the support of a lot of people in the community, and the trust of some of the people who owned a lot of land, particularly Paul Walton. And they built a base of easements that they held and established a track record of holding and enforcing them in an honest but not giving anything away, because when an easement is donated, the public, through the tax treatment, becomes a part owner of that interest in the land, and also has a stake because you care, as opposed to the people who permitted that abortion to be built on top of Snow King. And that was something that, as much as we pat ourselves on the back in Jackson Hole, and we've accomplished a lot, We've also bungled some things rather badly. But that job of keeping the institution together, of maintaining the public trust, of not simply acquiring easements, which is harder and harder, but monitoring them and enforcing them when people decide they're going to try to cheat on them, is a long, hard, it's actually very long according to the Internal Revenue Code. It's perpetual. This is quite a while. And the Land Trust has had a fortunate series of executive directors, capped by the one who's about to be honored tonight, and a dedicated board of very capable people. And it's the program setting that NRCC has done tonight, I think is very touching and very fitting to honor three beacons of wildlife conservation. I'm skipping the first couple of awards, excuse me. And then to honor these two organizations together, I think is very appropriate and very much in keeping with the to use another person's expression, it takes a village nature of this work. It does. We're still at it. The job is not going to end. It may seem intense right now because of the administration. It seemed pretty intense when we had, quite literally, down by Mosquito Creek, there was a drill rig working that was on the other side of the ridge, but not as far over as the height of the framing for the hoist rigs, and they had, of course, fluorescent lights all up and down all the rigging, which is typical for those things. So the Land Trust has really taken on a very, very difficult, steady job that requires persistence and commitment and integrity, and under Max's able hand now is moving it on forward very ably. If Jean were here, she would be proud. We were always careful not to speak for each other, but I will. We are both very proud and grateful. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Phil, and thanks to everyone. A lot of the work, I'm honored to accept this award on behalf of a lot of people. You saw the slide earlier. Currently, we have over 100 people affiliated with the Jackson Hole Land Trust in some form or fashion through our board, our staff. We have an incredible staff. We have an amazing board. We have advisory councils. We've expanded from working out of this valley into the entirety of the Wyoming portions of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So the mission is being applied at an ecosystem scale, at least in Wyoming through our work. The history of the organization dates back, as Phil was saying, 1980. I should mention, if you dial the Land Trust office line, that number used to ring in Phil's living room. That was actually kitchen, excuse me, not the living room, the kitchen, but literally, yeah. So it really does go back, and so honored to have the connection through Phil. But so many people in this room have been involved in informing the work of the organization. It's been pretty remarkable. As Todd said in his introduction, we've protected over 66,000 acres in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem via conservation easements held by the Jackson Hole Land Trust. We continue to expand that. We are working on about 20,000 additional acres across 32 more conservation easements right now. We expect to close somewhere in the range of 10 to 15 of those this year. The work is more important than ever. Many of you know and many of you inform our work, but we are in a losing game. The critical habitat that exists in this ecosystem is finite. It is being chopped up. We are losing critical habitat across this ecosystem. 20 years from now, we will have less critical habitat than we have now. I think everyone in this room is well aware of that. Conservation easements are an incredibly important tool in protecting what we have left, protecting the functionality of this amazing place in this ecosystem. It's a very powerful tool, and it's a voluntary tool. So while we accept this award on behalf of the organization, I should mention the landowners are really at the heart of this. If you think about it, and contrary to some popular belief, but conservation easements are never in a landowner's best financial interest. Maybe eventually that land increases in value, but when a easement goes in place, it is not in the landowner's best interest. And so it's nothing short of remarkable. We have over 310 conservation easements. A third of Teton County is permanently protected under conservation easement. Nearly a quarter of Sublette County is protected under conservation easement. That is the dedication of landowners. It's people who saw value in the land above financial value, who saw value in the ecology, who saw value in the agriculture, who saw value in the open space, the cultural resources on that land. It's pretty remarkable that there's been such a dedication. The power of this organization has been rooted in the conservation vision of this community. People have really cared, and when I say this community, I certainly do mean this valley, but I also mean the broader ecosystem of Northwest Wyoming in particular. It's pretty remarkable to see. It's sort of astounding what people have been willing to give up monetarily in order to protect critical lands. We do rely on so many of you. The science that you provide, the advocacy that goes on is critical to our work. Thank you for the partnership. It's an honor to accept this award, and we look forward to more successes on permanent conservation to come. Thank you. It's heavy.